What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Deku story. What if Deku became Ra-pist? If you enjoyed then please like, share and do comments, and also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. Izuku was taking the train home that day. That day. The day his life would turn on its head. The day his life was flipped, turned upside down. The day that nobody else would notice. He was waiting for his stop when he overheard that slightly interested him. Did you hear? They found another victim of that one serial killer. What did they call him? There are multiple serial killers, you fucking idiot. I know, but it's the recent one. The one that's a vigilante. Only been active for the last 3 months. You mean the Rose Killer? The Rose Killer. A serial killer that's been savagely killing men and women alike. He always left a rose at the scene of the crime. Oh yeah, he's claimed about 6 victims, right? 7 now. Ding. This was his stop. He got out of the subway and started walking home. It was uneventful for the most part. Katsuki saw him and called him a multitude of insults before letting him go. He got home and did his homework. It took quite a long time to finish. He finished by about 10:30. He saw the time and decided to call it a day. He went to the bathroom that was sectioned right next to his bedroom and started to brush his teeth. It was a very boring venture. There was no noise in the room except for the brushing. Brush, 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 brush. When he decided he was done, Izuku leaned down into his sink and he spat out the remaining toothpaste before looking back up in the mirror. That's when he saw him. There was a man behind him leaning against the wall. He had blood-red eyes. Eyes that would see through your soul. His hair was the same as Izuku's except messier, as if someone used it against him in a fight, lost and he hasn't bothered to fix it yet. He was wearing the same clothes as Izuku, yet his were ragged and torn in places. As Izuku's eyes widened at the unknown man, the man walked out of the room into the Izuku's bedroom and just looked at the posters. Izuku went to the door frame of the bathroom. Who are you? Izuku asked. The man turned to Izuku. He looked around before looking back at Izuku. His eyes were wide and he had a slight smile. Me. The man said. His voice was suave and confident. His voice made Izuku shudder slightly. Why yeah, why you? Izuku said. The man smiled even more. He started to chuckle which turned into a happy laughter. Woo, finally, you can see me. I've been waiting 3 whole fucking months. He shouted. Keep it down, Izuku said quietly. It's fine, nobody can hear me. The man said. What? Izuku asked, confused. About 3 months ago, well, 3.5. Kachan threw you into the ground and you hit your head on a rock, correct? The man stated. Yeah, so. Izuku asked, still confused. That's when I was born. And now we have a quirk. The man said, incredibly excited. Wait, what? No, I'm quirkless. What are you saying? Izuku asked again, more confused. The man sighed. Okay, you were attacked and incredibly wounded. I was born and took over. I got you to a hospital and got you patched up. Think of me as your guardian angel. The man smiled. What do you mean, we have a quirk? I'm quirkless. Izuku said. You're quirkless-ish. I'm not. Your body has a quirk. It just doesn't belong to you. The man said. Well, your body has 2 quirks. Oh, yeah, 3. Huh, the eyes. My red eyes are a quirk. They let me see right through a person into their inner thoughts. They let me face others' demons. Well, let us face others' demons now, if I feel like it. The man restated. Izuku blinked twice. What? Izuku said, walking towards a chair to sit down in. Well, it's not just a constant, that'd be fucking annoying. Just seeing fucking daddy issues everywhere. The man said with a laugh. What's your name? Izuku asked. I don't really have one. But you do know me by a nickname. The man said. Izuku raised an eyebrow. The Rose Killer. The man said with a grin. Izuku's eyes widened. No, that is not funny. Izuku said. Good. It's not supposed to be. Rose Killer said with a smile. So, I killed those people? Izuku asked, slowly easing into his seat at his desk. No, of course not. Your body did, but I was the one in control. Rose Killer said, trying to comfort the boy. The boy looked at the Rose Killer. Himself. That doesn't help. Izuku said, angry. Why? They tried to hurt you. That's my only goal, said the Rose Killer. Then why don't I remember them? Izuku asked. Because I took control when you weren't aware of me. Therefore, you erased those memories. Well, blocked out those memories. Rose Killer told him. Then unblock them. Izuku said, desperate. The Rose Killer shrugged and said, okay, before pulling his hand back and slapping Izuku. Izuku started moving to the floor before everything went white. It was night. Izuku had missed his train to school due to an unfortunate run-in with Kachan and therefore had to walk back to his home alone using a route he never went down before. He slowed down to look back at his phone's GPS system telling him which direction. It was about 9 p.m. God, how long did he take to get that injury wrapped up? That's when it happened. As Izuku walked past the alley, a hand reached out and grabbed the green-haired teenager by the throat and pulled him into the alley. The teenager's phone clattered to the ground. The man holding Izuku slammed him into the wall. Izuku was scratching at the man's hand. The man was Junko Naegi, the first person to fall victim to the Rose Killer. The man had a crazed look in his face. He was undoing his belt with his other hand. Izuku saw this and started kicking at him. The man tossed Izuku into a dumpster. Then something awakened in the boy. He stood up, back away from the to-be rapist. The rapist was still getting his bet off when he saw Izuku's head turn to face him. Izuku's face was filled with serene rage, like a dog ready to kill its first meal of the week. His eyes were blood red, he had a smile that showed his white teeth and he was growling, saliva going from his mouth. The man looked like he reassessed the situation and decided to run. As he turned around to leave, the alleyway became blocked with shadow men. They were as dark as the void. He turned back to Izuku, who was now brandishing a dagger as black as the void, and practically shapeless. The man who tried to rape Izuku had fear in his eyes. He didn't expect to die today. He started backing away from Izuku. Back. He was forced to a stop as the shadow men took a hold of him and held him in place. A pitch-black hand went over his mouth muffling his screams. Izuku jabbed the dark blade into the man's chest. The blade went straight through the lung and into the heart. He was dead almost immediately. The shadow men disappeared, along with the dark dagger leaving Izuku in front of the corpse of this rapist. He held his hand out over the corpse, palm up. A rose fizzled into existence over Izuku's hand and gracefully hovered down into his palm. His hand encircled it before Izuku knelt down next to the man and gently placed the rose on the man's chest. Sorry, Izuku said, his voice suave and confident. It had to be done. He put 2 fingers over the corpse's eyes and closed them. Izuku stood up and left. Izuku hit the ground shocked. He moved onto his back slowly. Holy shit, Izuku mumbled. Yeah, I know, Rose Killer said, his smile unwavering and easily shown in his voice. Rose, did all those people we killed, did they all try to attack me? Izuku asked. That's my name now. I like it. I mean, it's catchy, short, and it's good. And the Rose Killer started. Get to the point. Izuku snapped out. Geez, fine. You're no foreplay, all climax. Must be a wonder with the ladies. Rose said mockingly before replying to Izuku's question. Of course they didn't. That's been too many people to attack one person in 3 months. Only 2 attacked you. The other 4 were attacking others. Whether it be rape, murder, kidnapping, etc. Rose said while fiddling with a dagger of shadow. So, how come you have 3 quirks, while I have none? Izuku asked Rose. Well, your body has the quirks, and it's really only 1. I'm just using them. I'm in control of them. Could let you use them if I want. Rose said, hesitant. How? Izuku asked, desperate for the quirks locked inside of him. It'll hurt and it'll still take a bit. Rose said. Do it. Izuku said. Rose simply sighed before gesturing to Izuku's bed. Izuku got up and went to the bed. When he sat down, Rose placed his hand on Izuku's forehead. Izuku's forehead became warmer and warmer, hotter and hotter. Like he was inching closer and closer to a raging bonfire. Izuku tried leaning back but Rose put his other hand on the back of Izuku's head forcing him into the heat. It's burning hot now. Izuku starts to scratch at Rose's hand, groaning through gritted teeth. Rose pushes Izuku down to make him lie down on his bed. Izuku's eyes were clenched shut, his upper torso halfway off the bed. Izuku's grip on Rose's hand lessened slowly before falling at his side. At the same time, Izuku's clenched eyes relaxed. Rose pulled his hands away as he watched Izuku's shoulder that was off the bed slowly drag Izuku down. He flipped off the bed and his feet clattered with the floor. Damn kid, Rose said. Midoriya Inko peeked her head in and saw Izuku lying on the floor unconscious. You made too much fucking noise, Rose commented. Later, at the hospital, Izuku could only hear the voices of his mother and doctor sitting at his bedside. Is he gonna be okay? He recognized that voice. It belonged to his mother. He heard another unknown voice. They were muttering under their breath. Do my ass, said the voice. It was a man's voice, low and confident, yet annoyed and tired. Get me 2 cc's of endorphamine. The voice started distorting deeper and deeper. He seems to have gone into, another voice started to say before it distorted into nothingness. Just low murmurs, too deep to understand. That's when Rose's voice rang out. Hey, can you hear me? Said the serial killer vigilante, his voice echoing through the blank space. Suddenly, Izuku found himself in a white void. He looked around. Rose, Izuku shouted. It echoed throughout the expansive void of bright white. Good, you're here. Listen, you're stuck in a comatose state until you face the origins of each quirk. Rose explained quickly. The origins? Izuku asked, curiously. The origins. Your philosophy, your creativity, and your pain. Rose said. Now hurry. Izuku looked around. He saw nothing but white void. As he turned around, he saw 3 doors in a row. One door was a wooden door with a ton of scratches in the door. The scratches resembled stars and crowns, poems and hearts, heroes and villains and vigilantes. It was as if the margins of someone's notes was a door. The one next to it was a rusting metal door with chains on it. There was bloody handprint on it. The one next to that door was one that looked like it belonged to a college professor. There was a glass window with gold text on it. It read, Midoriya Izuku, and below that in a slightly smaller font, Philosophy Professor. Izuku went to the door with the glass window and knocked on it. Come in, said a voice behind the door. It was calm and collected, wise and knowledgeable. Izuku opened the door and walked in. On the other side of the door was a large lecture room with a desk at the front. At the desk was, himself. The one at his desk was wearing black sweatpants, a black t-shirt with a design saying, shut up, and no shoes. I knew you'd be coming here. Rose told me in advance. Don't think he got to the others, so watch out. They're a bit eccentric, said the man. Oh, I was told to see you, sir. Izuku asked. The man had no power of Izuku, but Izuku showed respect anyway. Please, call me Logan. The man said. Izuku nodded. Do you have any questions for me? Izuku asked. A few. Logan said. He gestured to a seat near the desk. Izuku sat down in it and Logan sat in the desk chair that had wheels and, more importantly, could spin if you were feeling childish. Izuku's was the opposite. Hard, wooden, no wheels. It was as if the chair were designed to seat a person about to be a torture victim. Izuku tried to get comfortable in the chair by placing his arms on the hard, wooden armrests. It didn't help, but he kept them there. And until you answer them and I understand you properly. Logan started. Suddenly, iron metal straps went over Izuku's wrists and ankles, locking the green-headed boy in the chair. You will not leave. Logan scooted his chair to in front of Izuku as the shackled boy looked at the shackles and shook his limbs in a futile attempt to unrestrain himself. What will you do with the quirks we will bestow to you? He asked. Izuku looked up at him, straight in the eyes. Logan's eyes were cold, analytical, emotionless. They looked like they could see right through him. Become a hero, Izuku said, without hesitation. And if you can't, if they don't let you. A vigilante, Izuku said, a little more hesitant. Then what happens to your mother? If you have to leave her? Logan asked. Then, I leave. And if you were to see a moment where intervention got you killed but saved the life of another, Logan started to ask, but Izuku answered before Logan could finish. I intervene. Izuku answered, confident for once. You're a doctor and you and another doctor need to transplant organs into 3 patients. One needs a heart, another a liver and another, a kidney. You have no organs but there is a perfectly healthy patient in a room that you could kill and use his organs to save the other 3. What do you do? Logan asks. Izuku waits a moment in thought. Finally, he looks at Logan. I have the other doctor perform surgery on me to give organs for the 3 patients. Izuku said, without hesitation. Logan smiles. The shackles locking Izuku in the seat retract, releasing him. You're still the same person as you always were. Logan said. Why couldn't you know that? Izuku asked, standing up. Logan started sorting some papers on his desk. Your pain shrouded you from me. I couldn't see how you were. How you changed. I couldn't bestow the quirk without knowledge of if you deserved it. Logan said, picking up the papers and placing them in a tray on his desk. So, what now? Izuku asked as Logan put his signature on a small paper. He calmly put it in a drawer and walked around to Izuku. He gently put his hands over Izuku's eyes. 1 hand for each eye. And just like that, Izuku's eyes felt different, like they weren't his own. Logan grabbed a mirror from his desk and showed it to Izuku. Izuku saw that his eyes were shifting at random. They shifted from his natural green that shined perfect, before shifting to something demonic. The green irises shifted to a dull rose red, leaving the pupil as it was. It then shifted back to the natural green. He was a bit curious as to why they changed back. That's when they shifted to the purely dull rose red that was there previously. Ah, Izuku quietly mumbled, realizing as his eyes became green again. His curiosity, currently at the very least, controlled his eyes. Neat. He looked at Logan, who was back to grading papers. Can I? Midoriya, Izuku said, trailing off. Logan looked back up to Midoriya. Oh, yeah, you can leave but first. Logan said, reaching into a drawer. He pulled out a key. If you want to talk to your pain, you'll need this. He said, tossing the key to Midoriya, who caught it easily. Midoriya nodded and left the lecture room. He was back in the white void. He walked over to the first door. The one with scratches depicting drawings of various things and heroes. Midoriya knocked on the door. Almost immediately, it opened, revealing a disheveled Midoriya with wide, bloodshot, and bagged eyes. The Midoriya that answered the door was actually smaller than actual Midoriya. The smaller Midoriya was holding a steaming mug that had a design on it. It said, "Shut up, let me finish my coffee." The shorter Midoriya wore large denim overalls with tons of paint marks on it. "Slow down, Damien," Midoriya said loudly, interrupting Damien. Damien stopped and turned to Izuku. "I'm Izuku Midoriya." "Oh, I wasn't expecting you," Damien said, shocked. Izuku didn't mind, however. "It's alright. I came because Rose told me I had to face you to gain my quirks." "I don't know, he doesn't explain it very well," Izuku said, looking around at the room. It was a fairly large room that depicted the inside of a log cabin. There was a desk with a typewriter on it in one corner of the room, an easel with a half-finished painting of a trash-covered beach at sunset on it in another, whittled wood in the form of All Might at another desk in another corner, and in the final corner were drums, guitars, etc. "Rose. Oh, you mean the new guy who arrived about 3.5 months ago?" Damien asked. Izuku simply nodded in response, causing Damien to nod in understanding. "So what do you want?" "The quirk. Apparently, you're the cause of one," Midoriya explained. Damien nodded and grabbed a knife from the whittling desk. "Tell me, what will you do with this quirk?" Damien asked, using the knife to cut shavings off a wooden block. "Become a hero," Midoriya said simply. Damien rolled his eyes and head in annoyance. He set down the knife and wood block on the whittling table and turned around to Izuku. "That's not what I asked. What I asked was, how will you use this quirk as a hero, so answer that one," Damien said, annoyed. Izuku raised an eyebrow, mentally noting that Damien didn't ask that question. "What do you mean?" Izuku asked. "Will you simply be there without making people notice your actions or give a shit, like you've done for the past 15 or so years of your goddamn life? Or will you announce to the world that people are safe because you're there to save them from the evil of this shitty world?" Damien asked. Izuku smiled. "If the world is in a room, I'm gonna kick down the door and announce that I'm gonna kick the collective butts of every villain," Izuku said with a smile. Damien smiled and started laughing. "Yeah, fucking destroy those damn villains," Damien said, walking up to Izuku, placing his hands on the others. Suddenly, they felt like someone else's hands. He put his hand up to eye level and saw a hyacinth fizzle into existence in his palm. "Huh, cool." Izuku looked at Damien, who went back to painting the trash-covered beach. Midoriya wondered where he's seen that beach before. It seemed oddly familiar. I'll be going, Midoriya said to Damien, who simply nodded in response. Midoriya left the cabin and re-entered the white void that housed the doors. He went to the metal, bloody, chained-up door. Midoriya grabbed the cold chains and lightly shook them. They clinked against the door and each other, but that was all they did. He saw that there was a large lock on the chains. Midoriya, remembering what Logan gave him, pulled out the key and pushed it into the lock. It fit. He unlocked it and the lock fell off, the chains following. Suddenly, Izuku started crying and he fell to his knees. This wasn't his normal cry though. Izuku's normal cry was caused by Kacchan hurting his body in the moment. But this cry was different. More desperate. He was clutching his chest as his upper body aligned with his shins that were flat on the floor. He wasn't whimpering as he cried. He usually kept his crying secret, or at least tried to. But this cry, he was screaming as the tears rolled down his face. He wasn't screaming words, just noise. This went on for what felt like hours. He finally stopped crying and stood up and looked at the door. It was ready to open. He wipes his eyes hoping to make it less red even though it had the opposite effect. Izuku calmed his voice so that it wasn't shaky anymore before opening the door before him. On the other side of the door, pure shadow. Even the bright white from the void containing the doors had no effect on the shadow. But far off in the black void was another Izuku Midoriya. This Izuku wore an off-black hoodie with off-black jeans, no shoes. He was crying. "Hello!" Midoriya shouted out, catching the attention of the other Midoriya. The other Midoriya dissolved into shadow and resolved in front of Izuku. "I already know who you are. Call me Tristan," the other Midoriya said. His eyes were sullen and full of pain. "How do you?" Izuku started before getting cut off by Tristan. "I'm your pain. I'm always with you. I can't leave," Tristan said, looking down. "Geez," Midoriya said under his breath. "Yeah," the other Izuku said with a small chuckle, staring at the ground. "Remember when Kacchan first turned on you?" Tristan asked. "Not quite," Izuku said, slightly embarrassed. Suddenly an image was thrown up in the void, like it were a movie theater. "Wouldn't expect you to. You were both about 5 at the time." He remembers. "I remember. He fell off of a fallen tree into a stream. That's when he first turned on you. Next week, he'd start calling you Deku," Tristan said, looking down. His words corresponded to the images in the void. "He pushed you down because you tried to help him up. And yet he still tries to be a hero. Piece o' shits like him don't deserve to be a hero." Tristan's hands balled into fists. "Promise me that if you two ever fight, you'll kick his ass." "I promise. But if he wants to be a hero that's his choice. We shouldn't judge him for that," Midoriya said with a slight smile. Tristan smiled and laughed at the added comment before hugging Midoriya. Midoriya lightly hugged back before he felt a tingling feeling. When they parted from the hug, Midoriya saw that the shadow from the dark void was wrapping around him, forming armor around him. When Midoriya looked back up towards Tristan he was gone, leaving Midoriya in the void. "Bye." Midoriya left the black void, re-entering the white void. In front of the 3-door was one new door. It was an off-white metal door with a sign that said, "Exit." Midoriya, seeing that, went over to it. He pushed it open. On the other side was Rose. "What are you doing here?" Midoriya asked. Rose was looking down. "I'm your quirk," Rose said. "What?" Midoriya asked, shocked. "I'm your quirk. I call it introspection. It's a quirk that uses the facets of your personality to have other quirks," Rose said looking down. All he heard was Izuku's words. "That's silence. That's just silence. Deafening silence. So freaking cool." Rose looked up to Izuku. Izuku's eyes were shining. Rose smiled and said to himself, "What were you so scared about?" And with that, they started walking away from the door. Together. Izuku's vision faded to darkness. Darkness, shadows, they were everywhere. Izuku's eyes shot open as he quickly sat up from the hospital bed. He was hyperventilating. He breathing calmed as he looked around confused. He looked to his left hand. A white rose fizzled into his hand. He smiled and looked at his right. The shadows from objects getting hit by the sunlight extended out from their place and wrapped around his hand, making a glove on his hand. They then retreated back to their original shadows. Izuku chuckled under his breath. He was no longer quirkless. Half an hour later, Izuku's doctor was updating his file. Name: Izuku Midoriya. Quirk: introspection. His quirk uses certain parts of his personality to create quirks to use. Only one facet of his personality are unlocked as of this time. Flower creation. He can create any flower at any time using fats from his body or parts of his clothing. He can strain himself by trying to make flower beds while restricting the amount of elements his body can use. It's been a week since Midoriya found his quirk. It was an odd one, but cool nonetheless. Yes, he lied to the doctor, but what people don't know can't hurt them, right? Ever since then, he's been practicing these quirks, trying to get better. Rose has been teaching him how from the back of his mind, occasionally taking control to show him how it's done. Izuku's been getting toned with the exercise routines Izuku's been putting himself through. That beach isn't going to clean itself. Izuku was walking home one day, taking a shortcut by going under the bridge, when he heard a voice. "Thanks for visiting, my new skin puppet." The voice spat out. Izuku turned to the source of the voice, only to be swallowed by a dark green slime. He was completely surrounded by the green slime, no room for shadow. The slime pushed itself through his mouth, shoving itself down his throat, choking him. "A hero will save me, just gotta." "No, they Wonneros said mockingly with a sing-song tone. "You're gonna die here." "No, you're wrong." "Oh really?" Rose taunted. "Prove me wrong. Prove that you won't die here like the pathetic wimp you are." "I'm not pathetic." "Yes you are," Rose asserted. "Die. Die my meat puppet. You're my little meat puppet." The slime beast said. "No I'm not," Izuku shouted, bursting into flames. The flames forced the slime off of him and out of him, as the flames HDA not only flowed from his pores but from his esophagus. The slime not lucky enough to get away from the flame boiled into ash. The bright red flames of determination surrounded him, but that's not all his determination could do. "God damn it," yelled out the slime monster before becoming splattered out onto the divot beneath the bridge, revealing All Might, the #1 hero. At the sight of Izuku's hero, the flames around Izuku distinguished, revealing Izuku's clothing to be perfectly fine and undamaged by the flames that turned the slime to ash. "Fear not, citizen," bellowed out the #1 hero. "For I am here." By this point, Izuku was squealing like the fanboy he is. "Geez, what do people say in this guy?" Rose muttered from the back of Izuku's head, a backseat driver of sorts. Izuku ignores him however and asked for an autograph, which he did, after swiftly containing the slime in a soda bottle and putting it in a secure pocket. It wasn't that secure as when he jumped away to head towards the police station, the bottle somehow got out of his pocket and onto the streets. It was still safely contained however, that is until a certain explosive teenager absent-mindedly kicked said bottle into a wall, causing the cap, the only thing keeping the slime monster inside, to pop off and attack the explosive boy. The slime pushed itself around the explosive teenager, causing the teenager to use his explosive quirk in retaliation, only making the situation worse. In 5 seconds flat, the buildings on both sides of the alleyway were on fire. In 10 seconds, some heroes and a news team was there along with an audience. 20 seconds, and the heroes were waiting for someone with a better quirk to show up. 25 seconds, Izuku Midoriya arrives. "Why aren't they helping?" "Because they're weak," Rose responded. 26 seconds. The average human can only hold their breath for about 30 to 40 seconds, excluding quirks. He reaching 30. 28 seconds. "What are you gonna do?" 30 seconds. "What I have to," Izuku thought in response. He started pushing his way through the small bundle of people he had yet to push through to see Kacchan, the explosive teenager and his bully. Does he deserve it? 31 seconds. No. 32 seconds. Then why save him? 33 seconds. Izuku gets to the front of the crowd and ducks under police barricades, which are supposed to be stopping the very thing he's doing. Because Dizarev has no part in the matter. 35 seconds. Izuku is sprinting past the heroes and police, towards the villain and his abductee. 37 seconds. "Hey, Slimy!" Izuku shouted, taking off his backpack. The set to Secret of the Ooze is that way. He finished, tossing the backpack at the slime creature's eyes. Normally, he would have been too nervous, but that's where Rose can take over. A bit. 38 seconds. "Aw, shit." The slime monster cried out, retracting long enough for Kacchan to get a breath out. Izuku reached into the slime to grab Kacchan's hand while preparing the other to go flaming. Once Izuku found Katsuki's hand, he started pulling him out while setting him ablaze his other hand and using the lit hand as a sort of counterweight. The hand with Katsuki comes out a bit, the one ablaze goes in a bit. Using this technique brought Katsuki out safety, and bought enough time for All Might to punch the slime beast so hard it started raining, helping quell the flames on both Izuku's hand though it wasn't needed, and on the buildings. The heroes praised Katsuki, who only made stuff worse. They praised Izuku too, but not because he helped or something like that. Because he had a cool quirk. Astonished at how professional heroes could be so petty, he simply walked away, not giving the heroes any response. He was almost home when he heard Katsuki shout out to him. Deku. Izuku turned around to see Katsuki. I didn't need your help, okay? The explosive teen shouted. Curious, Izuku turned on the eyes that let him see into the soul of someone, see where they're hurting. Katsuki became a silhouette as Izuku watched that moment way back when. A moment Katsuki never forgot. And a moment that Izuku didn't remember until recently. Izuku and Katsuki as children. Katsuki fell of the fallen tree bridge into the small stream. Izuku went down to help him up. It showed Katsuki's child face. Weak, Katsuki's voice bellowed out. It was his thoughts about himself. Become stronger. Stronger. Weak. Be stronger. It showed Izuku's face again. Beat him. Izuku's eyes returned to their normal color and the silhouette turned to normal, showing Katsuki looking at the floor. I had it fine all on my own. Katsuki shouted. Okay. Izuku said with a kind smile. I didn't need your help. Okay. Katsuki humphed and walked away. Izuku looked down to the floor and let out a low chuckle. He turned and started walking. It hasn't been a good day for Izuku. The day after he helped Katsuki, the explosive teen laid into the green-headed teen even more. Today had been an exceptionally brutal display and left him aching all over. Now, he was getting robbed. Just give me everything you got, shouted the robber. I don't have anything. Izuku shouted in fear. Fight back, Rose suggested, his voice ringing through Izuku's mind. No, I can't, Izuku retorted. Then I'll just have to kill you. The robber spat out, their eyes glazed with rage and their arms covered in needle marks. That's it, Rose said, taking control of Izuku's body, forcibly turning Izuku into a passenger. The robber brought their knife up and tried to slam it down, only to meet nothing but air, as Rose had caught the robber's wrist, stopping the blade in its tracks. Rose was glaring at her with his red eyes. Izuku and Rose could both see. Her father beating her, mistreating her, raping her. Then her uncle. Then her priest. Her best friend's father. Passed around like a plaything. A child being born. A child she didn't know the father to. A child she hated. A child she didn't want. Drug addiction later on. She no longer spent any waking moment sober. She was suffering. A dark blade appeared in Rose's other hand. Rose, no. He slowly brought it back behind him. Rose, don't do this. The woman snarled at Rose, slamming her fist into his chest. Izuku felt every slam, every fist hitting his chest, every damn one. Rose, don't you dare. The dark blade flew forward, directly into the woman's gut. She stopped hitting Rose's chest. The blade slowly came out and blood was coughed out onto Midoriya's red shoes, blending in perfectly. The blade flew up into her throat. Rose and Izuku watched as the life flowed out of the girl's eyes. Rose lightly laid her to the floor. A soft whimpering could be heard in Rose's mind. He knelt down, careful to not get any blood on him, and materialized a good white rose in his hands. He pulled the knife of shadow out from the woman's throat and blood shot out, splattering onto the white rose alone, staining it. He was careful. He moved her legs together and straightened her out before putting her hands together around the tainted white rose at her chest. I'm sorry, Rose muttered. May you rest in peace. You're a monster. Izuku murmured in Rose's thoughts. Maybe, Rose said. But then, what does that say about you? The two didn't speak to each other for nearly a month. They had their differing opinions which they both held headfast in life. Izuku's being to help people no matter what. Rose's being to do what he's supposed to, consequences be damned. His job, protect Izuku and do what's good for him. Even if the boy doesn't want him to. It was during a random math test that Izuku was half paying attention to when he heard Rose again. Izuku, we need to talk. Rose said, concerned. You need to stop killing people. Izuku retorted. I did what I have to protect you. This blocking me out thing, it isn't healthy. Rose said, genuinely wanting to help the child. Since when did you care about health? Izuku asked, in his head, the grip on his pencil tightening. Since it was your health in question. Rose said in their mind. The pencil loudly snapped in half. Izuku was done anyway. He stood up and turned in the test before leaving to go to the bathroom. He walked into the bathroom and washed his face a bit before looking in the mirror. In the reflection of the mirror, staring right back at Izuku. His eyes were red with dark bags under them, his hair ruffled and his clothes ragged. Even to the untrained eye, one would be able to see the difference in the two, that is if Rose were visible. I am doing what is best for you. Rose said through the mirror, gripping the sink. Midoriya's eye twitched in response before looking around, making sure the bathroom was empty. Finding nobody inside, he returned to the sink, to the mirror, to Rose. How is murder what's best for me? Izuku growled. His hand grew tight on the sink before raising it onto the sink itself in the form of fists. She would have killed you. Rose said, determined to get through to Izuku. You could have disarmed her. Izuku said, his knuckles growing white. She would have still done I. Rose started before being interrupted by Izuku's fist slamming into the mirror, shattering it and cutting into his skin. The glass falling from above his fist cut into his backhand. Izuku, Rose said. Izuku rolled up the sleeve of the arm he used to punch the window and walked out of the restroom, a blood trail following. The bell rung and the classes started to leave. That is until they saw Midoriya walking down the halls. The sight of his bleeding hand, small bits of glass occasionally falling out of it, caused them to freeze in their tracks. He walked outside and headed to the hospital, unimpeded by everyone, seeing as they actively moved out of his way. What happened to your hand? Asked the nurse that was bandaging his hand. Oh, I had a temper tantrum with my alternate personality. Joked Rose. He could tell Izuku stifled a chuckle. Punched a mirror. Izuku nervously stated. The nurse raised a brow before asking, why? I don't know. Izuku lied. Rose let out a dry chuckle in Izuku's mind. Liar. Rose said in Izuku's mind. Once the nurse left, Izuku finally responded. Well, I couldn't just tell her the truth, could I? My quirk pissed me off. Izuku thought before letting out a small, quiet, dry laugh of his own. Listen, Rose said, his voice low and serious. I know you didn't want me to kill her, but you saw what was bothering her. She was suffering. In pain. By that point, the only choice is. Rose trailed off. Izuku sighed dejectedly. Yeah, Izuku said. I know. Jason Gaia is head detective of the Rose killer case. He, at this moment of time, is looking at a pin board with photos of the crime scenes with pins connected to a map of Musutafu. He's sipping from a coffee cup which is filled with coffee. It's actually more bourbon than it is coffee. His 9 o'clock shadow covers a small scar on his chin, his jet black hair parted to the left with a few strands in front of his face, his steel blue eyes piercing into the map and photos, as if to say, tell me what the goddamn connection is, and the map and photo replied simply. No. 1 week until UA entrance exams. Izuku and Rose are training hard. Well, Izuku is. Rose is just watching Izuku do some stretching, the one where he bends over and tries to touch his toes. Come on, work that thing, Rose yelled from the lawn chair behind Izuku. This caused Izuku to blush despite Rose being, basically, a much more confident, and prone to murder, version of Izuku. He shouldn't have worn these damn tight shorts today. And why did he take his shoes, and socks, and shirt off? Despite the slight redness on his cheeks, Izuku teasingly shook his ass at his alter ego, causing an eruption of laughter from his alter ego. But that's not all he heard. From above him, originating from the boardwalk that could now look down on him as he had removed most of the trash, a high-pitched eep. Now confused instead of slight embarrassment, the red disappeared as he looked up towards the boardwalk. Up on the boardwalk was a lone red-faced girl. She had long brunette hair that circled her head with hazel eyes to match. Her face was reddened. She was wearing pink shorts, the kind that hug at the butt, a black tank top and white and pink sneakers. Izuku was about to scream. Luckily, Rose knew this and, wanting to save them both from embarrassment, took over and bent over and started laughing. The girl started laughing too. Izuku was screaming in Rose's head. Now that I've got your attention, Rose said. What are you doing here? The girl smiled and started walking towards the stairs down to the beach. Well, she said with a smile. I'm training for the entrance exams to UA. I should have started earlier but. She trailed off before shrugging. I didn't. By now she was down at the beach and walking towards Rose holding her hand out for a handshake. Rose being the suave and confident gentleman he is, he took hold of her hand and gently brought it up where his soft lips met it, leaving a soft and kind kiss. He pulled away before returning the hand to the girl, who was now blushing hard. Ochako. Uraraka. Nung ggggghhhhhhghhghhghhghh. Screamed Izuku. Izuku Rose Midoriya. Rose said with a slight smile. Rosé. I like it. Uraraka said, recovering from the previous embarrassment. Rose's smile turned a little mischievous. He held his hand out as the air above it fizzled into light which then took the shape of a red rosé. He took a light hold of it and held it out to her. Ask and ye shall receive. Rose joked as Ochako took the rose, somehow becoming even redder than she was before. MMMMMMMMNNNNN. Rose. Izuku screamed in embarrassment. Well, thank you, Uraraka said, completely flustered. Rose, still smiling, bowed. My pleasure. Now, would you like to train me with me? Rose asked a kind smile. Uraraka looked at Rose's eyes with her mouth agape and then to the rose he gave her. Then to the ocean. She closed her mouth and looked back at Rose. I'd like that. It's been about 5 hours since Uraraka and Rose met. They trained for about 4.5 hours before stopping to watch the sun set in silence. That is, until Uraraka spoke. Hey Rose, she asked looking at the boy. Yes, he asked in response, looking only at the beautiful sunset. Yes, he could still see it with Izuku in control but it wasn't the same. I just realized that I don't know what your actual quirk is and I thought that since you know mine with the whole gravity thing and, well. Uraraka trailed off before Rose finished her sentence for her. You want to know my quirk? Was I right? He asked, still looking out at the ocean. Yeah, she said in response, looking down sheepishly. Rose sighed in response. Well, my quirk is called introspection. Rose said, receiving a whispered, cool name, from Uraraka. It takes the facets of my personality and makes them quirks, well. Not my personality. Rose said. Huh. Went to Uraraka, obviously confused. I'm actually just a facet of the person who owns this personality that kinda blossomed into a new personality. Rose said. This body is not my own. Uraraka was shocked to say the least and the two spent the next couple minutes staring out to the sunset. Could I meet the person who owns this body? She asked, looking at Rose again. Rose finally turned and looked at her again. Yeah, but first let me tell you a few things about him. He's extremely nervous around just about anyone, even me to an extent. He's easily flustered, kinda adorable, Rose said, causing Izuku to scream in Rose's head in response. And he's got a lot of love to give. Enough that if you poured soup in his lap, he'd apologize to you. Rose finished causing a laugh from Ochako. Let me get him out here for ya. He said before closing his eyes and inhaling deeply. He exhaled and he opened his eyes. Hey, I'm Izuku. Izuku Midoriya, he said, gently holding out his hand. Ochako giggles and shook his hand. The two turned to the sunset again and she leaned her head against Izuku's shoulder, causing his face to redden. You know, Ochako said. He was right about you. About what? You are adorable. Izuku was walking to UA to take the entrance exam, not talking to Rose and his face was almost as red as the flower Rose was named after. Almost. Rose however was talking his ass off. They, being the same person, were wearing a deep red t-shirt with a black splatter-like design on the front with the words, No Mo, Rules, written on it. It's written in large yellow block letters with, No Mo, written above, Rules, with a in between them in the form of a gun. Pictured next to the words with the gun in between, firing with the bullet and its trail being the, all in the same red as the rest of the shirt, black basketball shorts two on at the same time in case of Katsuki, a small messenger bag at his side, and his practically iconic red sneakers. Seriously, you see his shoes and you know that it's Izuku. The two were focused on one thing. Passing UA's entrance exam. It was gonna be hard but they could do it. They had to do it. Jason Gaia was going over the report of the testimony of an eyewitness. Red sneakers, He grumbled with a smirk. That was the one thing that connected the testimonies. The one thing that popped out at them. The guy was so bland, they forgot everything about him. Except for his shoes. He's here, standing in front of Ua. The school of his or any person's dreams. The quad towers glimmered in the sunlight. As he took that fist step onto campus, only one thing was on his mind. That he's here, finally. After all the work, after all the struggles, after all the pain, he was here. What wasn't on his mind was, make sure you don't fall on your first step on campus. You could tell that as immediately after he set foot on campus, he tripped. And I do mean literally. As Izuku fell, he tensed up and closed his eyes for the crash landing while Rose said only one thing. Oh goddammit. The crash never came, however, as the sound of Izuku hitting the floor was replaced with a familiar girl's giggles. As he opened his eyes, he realized he was floating and slowly turning forward, currently being upside down, his head facing the floor. Thought it may be a bad omen to trip on the first day. Ochako said, smiling at Izuku's upside-down face, which was now facing her with blushing cheeks. Izuku started before something interrupted him. Deku. Katsuki shouted, stomping towards campus and also Izuku. This sudden outburst caused Uraraka to turn around and accidentally released the gravitational hold on Izuku, dropping him onto the ground. Hearing the fairly loud thud behind her, she turned around to see Izuku lying on his chest, his arms and hands in the position that makes you fall the slowest, almost touching the floor. Ow! Izuku grumbled and slowly started to get up. He started, and Katsuki, being the kind person he was, expedited the process by grabbing Izuku by the collar of his shirt and lifting him up into the air. What did I tell you about going to Ua? Asked Katsuki, telling into Izuku's face. Don't. Izuku said simply, hands gripping Katsuki's wrists. Katsuki's grip shifted from two hands on the collar to one hand on the throat. And what in the shit did you do? Katsuki asked. Rose put a little bit of his self-confidence into Izuku. Izuku's mouth formed a sly grin while his eyes showed that he wanted to tell Katsuki that cursing is bad. Not that, Izuku said confidently. Angered, Katsuki raised Izuku up and slammed him to the ground. He was fast enough for Ochako to be unable to intervene, but long enough he could see and savor and store the memory of Izuku's face. The greenette's eyes were widening and his face spelled one thing. Well, that didn't go so well. Once Izuku landed, he arched his back with his mouth open in a sideways oval, his teeth gritted as he groaned. This face said, ow. Izu. Ochako said in surprise as Katsuki scoffed and said, not so tough now, huh? Ochako rushed to Izuku as Katsuki walked towards where the exams took place. You okay? Ochako asked, concerned. Izuku nodded. Still just as tough, Izuku said jokingly. That gained a small chuckle from Ochako and slowly grew until eventually she was full out laughing with her face buried in her chest. Unknown to the other, both of their faces were red. Izuku found his assigned seat, which was right next to Katsuki's. Shit, thought both Rose and Izuku as he sat down next to the explosive teenager. Katsuki growled in response. Why the fuck did he just growl? Rose asked. No clue whatsoever, Izuku thought in response. As Izuku listened intently to the hero talking about the entrance exam, he didn't realize that he was muttering his thoughts. Eventually, a person his age called him out on that. If you're just going to be nuisance to everyone around you, just leave. The male said. Instantly, Rose and Izuku started analyzing him. Blue hair, engines on the legs. Must be a speed-based quirk. His chin has fucking 130-degree angles on either side. Could say his mother fucked an octagon. Didn't know you had it in you to swear. What can I say, you're rubbing off on me. Okay, think I got it, I'm taking control. Lead the way. Thought the two before Izuku's eyes changed red in such a way that it would only have been noticeable if seen it before. Bitch, why do you look like your mother fucked an octagon, you Sonic the Hedgehog looking ass motherfucker? Rose said, a mischievous smile on his face as laughter erupted around him, even from Katsuki. Rose smiled and sat down. The rest of the lecture was uneventful, explaining how the practical exam would work. 1-point robots, 2-point robots, 3-point robots and 0-point robots. Rose didn't see the point in point robots with no point value. They then had to take their written exam, which Izuku did fine on. Then, they went towards the practical exam centers. At least he wasn't in the same as Katsuki. Jason Gaia entered the forensics office desperate. "You got anything?" he asked the lab rat. The man smiled. "I got a partial print off the rose," he said smugly. Gaia smiled. "Okay, still no, 1 rose, orders from any of the flower shops nearby. Cross-reference the print with the quirk database. See if it matches anyone who can make flowers or roses with their quirk." Gaia said with a smile. "You got it, boss. Hopefully, we'll catch the son of a bitch," said the man. "I swear, it's you lab rats who make us cops look good." Izuku was stretching by the door of the practical exam, going over his plan with Rose. "Okay, he says go, we run. Make sure you go right when he says go, no matter what." "I know what go means. After that go after the bots, and help others do some damage. Can't be a hero school if they don't let in those who help others, right?" "Right. Okay, and the 0-pointer. Leave it the fuck alone." "Right," the two thought. They were silent for a moment before Izuku spoke, thought up. "So, if you were born of my quirk, what do you represent?" he asked. "Oh, that. I represent your will to live. To survive. Self-preservation, in layman's terms. Which is why," Rose started before Izuku interrupted. "You conflict with my philosophy side. My altruism. Self-preservation and hurting the self to protect others don't go hand in hand." Izuku thought. "Usually. But nothing about us is usual." "Damn straight," thought Izuku. "Go," shouted Present Mike, and for half a second, Izuku did nothing but Rose forced him to start running into the false city, leaving his peers in the dust. He glanced behind him to see his peers chasing him, determined. Izuku's eyes widened and he ran even faster. The first bot Izuku saw was a 3-pointer. It was large, but Izuku easily got on top by jumping and using his shadows to push himself on top. There were easily visible gears between the main body and the legs. He went over to each and jammed them up with random flowers. He jumped into the head and started melting it down with the heat of the flames on his hands. He jumped down and kept running, 3 points under his belt. He was a little sad that he had to destroy the robot, seeing as it was fucking cool. Jason Gaia was looking over the blood splatter reports of the Rose killer crime scenes he got from forensics when one of the lab rats walked in with a folder in his hand. "Everyone on the quirk database who has the ability to create flowers," the man said before placing it on the detectives and walking off. Jason Gaia put down the blood splatter reports and checked the new folder. In the following, bold italics is what the folder says and italics is what Jason is thinking. Jason Agony. Age, 57. Quirk, flower manipulation. Can manipulate flowers into following blah blah blah. Jeremy Downs. Age 19. Quirk, flower creation. Can create flowers at will. No. Izuku Midoriya. Age 15. Introspection. Introspection. His quirk uses certain parts of his personality to create quirks to use. Only one facet of his personality are unlocked as of this time. Flower creation. He can create any flower at any time using fats from his body or parts of his clothing. He can strain himself by trying to make flower beds while restricting the amount of elements his body can use. Huh, interesting. One of the quirk origins is changing your quirk slightly or majorly, most likely the former. Rose said, sitting down on some rubble. "This has happened to me a couple times before while you were unaware of me." "What did you do to pass the time?" asked Izuku. "Screamed and messed around with our body," Rose said. When Izuku's eyes widened, so did Rose's. "Oh God, not like that," he yelled before gesturing to Izuku. Izuku turned around, backed away from where he was. Because the spot where he was occupied by himself. "What the?" mumbled Izuku before Rose spoke. "We're basically just thinking really fast. At least from what I can tell. Nobody really explained this to me. Just had figure it out." Rose trailed off. "So now, we talk about just fucking ask a question," Rose said smugly. The two laughed and started walking around the city. The two walked in silence for a few minutes. "So, why did you force me to meet the origins of my quirks? Couldn't you have just given them to me?" Izuku asked. "Well, that wouldn't have been as fun. It also made you face yourself. Your true self," Rose replied. Izuku raised a brow and Rose continued. You weren't being true to yourself. Your actions contradicted what you wanted. By facing your origins you're setting aside the mask, your persona to see your true self. Your quick thinking, determination, and creativity, your pain that drives them all. If it weren't for that, you wouldn't be the person you are today. Rose finished. Izuku was quiet for a moment. All right, Izuku said, and the two walked in silence for a few minutes. God, this is boring. Izuku and Rose were standing in front of a blonde man with flowing hair, bluish eyes, and a mouth that's shaped like a wide versus. He's currently running from the giant robot, well, stumbling from the giant robot. He's wearing a large belt that covers his stomach. The belt is seemingly bedazzled and has a large light blue gem in the middle. Why this is there, neither have an idea. This dude looks ridiculous. Izuku plainly states. Rose chuckles. Preaching to the choir, Zooks. Preaching to the choir. The two had strayed far from where the large robot. That's what happens when you wander aimlessly. They spent the time in silence, occasionally noting how nobody was around. At least, nobody was around. Oh hello you two. I've been looking for you, said the disheveled, overalls and t-shirt wearing artist known as Damien, a quirk origin in the mind of Izuku Midoriya. Well, just Izuku really. I wanted to update me quirkan so, here I am. Said Damien, drinking what Izuku assumes to be coffee in the same coffee cup he shattered last time Izuku and Damien saw each other. You done with the update yet? Asked Rose, ready to fight a huge robot. Almost, just gotta tell Izuboyer what is going in with his quirk. Damien told Rose before turning to Izuku. He changed your flower creation quirk a little bit. Not only do you now create any plant life you know of, you can now control their growth and what they do as they grow. Damien said excitedly. Huh, Izuku said, confused due to not being able to understand the speed talker. You make any plant life, and you can control its growth and actions. Rose said. Izuku nodded, both main personalities ignoring Damien's grumbling about gargantuan brute, and flowery son of a, etc. Well, I feel excuse me, you have somewhere to be, I believe. Damien stated before snapping his fingers. Izuku blinked and they were back to the robot. Gah, fucking hate that, Rose yelled before shuddering. Anyway, let's plan out what we're going to do. Rose finished before the two started to do just that. Ready Rose? Izuku asked. Ready. Just snap your fingers, back to reality. Rose smiled. Izuku raised his hand, looked around, and smiled. He then snapped his fingers. He was back in his regular body, staring right at the robot. Time speeds back up to normal speeds and sound returned. He ran towards Ochako and used his shadow quirk to blast the rock off, using the shadow from underneath the large piece of rubble to push it up and off into the head of the giant robot, which staggered back in response. Can you move? Izuku asked. Ochako nodded and tried to get up before yelling out in pain and going back to her position of when Izuku asked, proceeding to shake her head, no. Izuku cursed under his breath before looking at the robot. You know what? He started walking towards it, his hands at his side, slowly bring his hands into a shape that made it look like he was holding an invisible orb. Underneath the giant robot was its shadow, which had grown black and oily in a circle about 5 feet wide, always contained by the shadow, unable to touch the sunlight. Shadows seemed to be coming from their original spots and converging into oily circle. Fuck the plan, Izuku stated with a smile on his face. One of Izuku's hands turned into a fist as the other reached out towards the robot. As this happened, Izuku looked strained in his face and the oily black circle under the robot widened and lashed out towards the edges of the robot, as if it had leash that had just loosened. His hand reach ring towards the robot made 4 hooking-like gestures, 2 towards the left and 2 towards the right. As that happens, vines shoot out and wrap around the robot's legs and tighten so that it can't move. Izuku's hand returned to that orb shape as his other hand uncurled. The oily circle then stabilized again. He smirked and shot one hand up as the other fell to his side. The oily black circle shot up in the form of a spike and skewered the robot. The skewer lifted a bit as the vines on its 2 front legs snapped. Izuku ran forward and jumped, shadows pushing him higher than a normal person. He was about 50 feet above the robot, which was now slowly going back to the ground due to gravity. He smiled towards the sky, knowing he did this right. He had calculated this perfectly. He started falling face first towards the robot, now an eighth of the way to the ground, and he used the new determination quirk to become enveloped in flame. After a few seconds, he fell through the hole in the top of the zero-pointer, which Rose was still whining about, and he would have hit the armor plating on the inside of the robot. That is, if he hadn't exploded completely into flames before then, his body having completely dissolved. The flames boiled the circuitry inside the robot and caused the large machine to shut down and die. It collapsed onto the false highway running through the false city, bringing up a cloud of dust that pushed past those who ran and those who watched the boy attack as well. Tenya Iida, the boy Izuku and Rose mocked before the entrance exam started, could only watch in awe as the boy he thought was a rude and unkind person, even if also imaginative, took on this giant of a metal beast to save this girl. Sure, he was wrong to judge him, but he wrong to judge him on his looks. Ochako Uraraka looked towards the immobile metallic creature used to test the upcoming students of UA. She was happy. She'd have too. Boom. Out of the hole Izuku made shot out flames as one of the batteries had exploded, completely destroying the midsection of the robot. She froze. Silence permeated through the air, thick and hard to break. But she did with one word. Izu. She had said quietly. Izu. She said as the shock wore off and she started understanding what happened. Izu. She yelled out, crying, not caring who heard her. Her friend was gone, wasn't he? Oh God, just like that. His last words to her were, see ya later. Because they were assigned different seats. You lied, she thought in her head. Another explosion sounded of, bombing her ears with noise. Another battery most likely. The explosion reached up into the sky and above the loud of heat in the color orange, flames licked at the sky, forming the shape of a person. The flames retreated, revealing the smiling green-headed jack of all trades, Izuku Midoriya. His body turned to flame and shot forward about 5 feet before they were sniffed out, back into Izuku, and he started falling towards the floor, looking like a man with a plan and a smile. Izuku had no plan. Shit. What now? Izuku asked in his head. I don't know. You're the one who abandoned the plan because you couldn't do a fireman's carry. Rose retorted, getting a little panicked. We're not getting any slower. Got it. I'm taking over. Take the wheel. Izuku thought, not looking forward to becoming the stain on the sidewalk that just doesn't come out. Izuku's eyes gained a red tint, indicating that Rose took over the body. Vines shot between buildings, creating a sort of path. He swung and bounced from vine to vine before landing in front of all this who had watched what just happened along with Ochako as people had dragged her back during his fight. Quick, we need a 1R. Hey everyone, Rose said calmly. Katsuki walked out of his exam center and walked towards the exit of UA campus. When he arrived, he waited so that he could attack Deku. It took about half an hour before he saw Izuku with a person on either side of him. One, he recognized as the girl who Deku had been talking to when he first saw him. The other, Katsuki recognized as the man Deku fucking roasted. Guess they made up. Deku had his back to him. Good. Katsuki started running at Deku. Deku. Katsuki shouted in rage. Izuku was having a nice day. He impresses his, hopefully, new classmates. He had, probably, made a good impression with the people who chose who gets into UA. He doesn't remember the word, but that's not what matters. Now matters. And now? Well, now's pretty damn good. Deku. Katsuki shouted in rage. Well, it was. Izuku turned around just in time to be met with Kachan's fist. Arg. Izuku said, stumbling back into Tenya. Well, it isn't Kachan's signature knuckle sandwich, now only $5.99. Izuku quipped with a slight grin. Deku. Katsuki growled in annoyance. Kachan. Izuku said with a smile. What are you doing here, shithead? Kachan yelled. I told you to give up on this shit. He said again. Izuku's eyes widened. Oh, you thought I'd just do what you said? Izuku asked with a slight smile. You see, I'm going to do this. Whether you like it or you don't, doesn't matter. I am going to chase what I want. He said with a smile. Guess what? What? Katsuki growled out. I learned that from you. Izuku sat on his bed with a bag of peas on his right eye and one on his jaw. That didn't end well. No shit. The guy's a giant ball of rage. I thought that would freeze him up long enough for me to run off. Has that ever worked before? Izuku and Rose woke up at 5 a.m. that morning. They never wake up at 5 a.m. There was a special reason for their waking this early. It was their first day of school at UA. Got your phone? Check. Laptop? Check. Wallet? Izuku patted his ass. Is it bad I want this on a t-shirt? Dang it. Izuku thought as he looked around for his wallet. You put it down yesterday, where'd you put it? Rose questioned. If I knew where I put it, we wouldn't be in this situation. Izuku said with slight annoyance as he threw things around in search of his wallet. Got it, he said, holding up his wallet with a smile. Well, yippee-ki-yay. Now can we continue with the list? Rose said with a mirth to his voice. You got it, Izuku thought in response. Rose continued his list. Izuku has the items for the list. Izuku was ready to go. Jason Gaia looked over the large cork board with pictures tacked onto it with pushpins. A map of a small district of Musudafu with two pushpins in blue connected by blue yarn with red pushpins around them. The red pushpins had red yarn wrapped around them, connected to the pushpins keeping the photos of the crime scenes on board. One of the blue pushpins was connected to a picture of a school. The other was connected to a picture of an apartment building. Both pictures connected to a picture labeled main person of interest. The picture is of Izuku Midoriya. Jason smiled as he grabbed his desk phone and dialed someone. Hey, it's Detective Gaia. Jason Gaia, Gaia. He said before waiting a moment. Yeah, can I get a tail placed onto the Rose Killer person of interest? His name's Izuku Midoriya. Izuku stood at the gates of UA, his mind blank with astonishment. He made it. He made it to UA, the alma mater of the #1 hero. All Might. He smiled to himself, with stars in his eyes as he looked upon campus. Life was good. Little did he know of the black sedan watching from the side of the road. He stood outside the class he'd be in for the rest of his time here. He was nervous, excited, and ready to go. He opened the door with a smile which fell slightly at the first two of his new classmates he saw, mainly the latter. Iida, thought Rose, a smile on his face if he had one at the time. And King Explosion Murder. Even he wouldn't come with a name like that, it's so dumb. Single quote. Lord Explosion Murder. I'm not convinced he knows what a Lord is. Agreeing with himself, Izuku prepared for the absolute worst, ready to dodge the murderous attempts at him by the explosive teen. He did say the worst. Kachan looked to Izuku and growled to himself. Before going back to his phone. Better than expected. Iida walked over with a smile. Greetings, Midoriya-san, Iida said with a smile before bowing to a 90-degree angle with such ferocity, with such speed, he made a gust of wind that literally caused Midoriya to stumble back a bit. Once again, I apologize for my rudeness last time we met. It was ignorant of me to assume that you would possess the same type of self-control of one's mouth to realize they're speaking, and for that I apologize. Iida said quickly, leaving Midoriya and Rose shocked. Hi, and Midoriya trailed off, unsure how to respond to the possibly backhanded apology. Eventually, he picked the safe option. Thanks, Midoriya said, phrasing it like a question to show his confusion. That didn't end well. Iida went from 90 to a straight with such ferocity and speed that he caused another gust of wind, this time pushing Midoriya over the railing had pushed him against. Before either of them knew it, Midoriya was falling off of the second-story railing. Rose knew that falling from the second story to the first floor, ground floor wouldn't hurt the greenette, too bad. And so Midoriya landed onto the tiled floor on his back, causing him to groan. Iida peeked over the railing. You okay? He asked. Midoriya, should I give the sass? Give the sass. Midoriya's eyes shimmered as the faint red tint fell over them. Oh, I'm fine. Rose groaned out. Just your average everyday getting thrown over by your friend. Do that all the time. He growled out the last part. Sadly, it seems Iida was very literal. Ah, great. Though I recommend you do that less often, I'm glad I was able to participate. He said before entering class 1A once more. Damn it, Iida. Both Rose and Midoriya thought.